So my name is Charles Davis. I am one of the workforce development training consultants with the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Excited to be here with you all this morning to discuss a hot topic of stress management, something that I'm sure we've all experienced, not only through COVID, but specifically this week with this migration. So hopefully everyone's getting through that well as can be. So I wanted to start off just from the top and say two things. And one of those things is that all stress is not bad. And then the second thing is that stressors are definitely all around us. So stressors can be found in our families, in our finances, in our living situations, at work, and just in various situations. So we can't necessarily get away from stress, but how we handle that and how we look at it and how we get through it, we can talk about that today. So some of the things that we'll discuss, you will hear a couple things probably repeated. I promise you I'm not doing that just to hold you for a long time because we do have a brief time together, but just some things are going to intertwine because we're going to be talking about work-life balance. We're going to be talking about emotional well-being, and we're going to be talking about stress management, and those all kind of come together. So although the main topic is stress management, we'll definitely discuss all three, and then we'll have a segment even dedicated at the end to wellness as it relates to the holiday. So we will go ahead and get started. In terms of an agenda, as you can see, and that was as we've discussed earlier, in terms of housekeeping, again, please feel free to utilize the chat. There will be a couple questions that I'll ask, and I am looking forward to responses to those questions. But in terms of if you have a question that you want an answer to or response to that I can answer for you, or just a comment that you want to add, we can definitely touch on those at the end as this is being recorded. So we'll start off talking about stress and how it affects you. That can be physical stress. Stress can affect you physically, mentally, emotionally. And we can talk about, again, how stress affects you at work as well. And speaking of work, we want to create a work-life balance for ourselves, right? So we want to make sure that the stress that we're experiencing isn't to such a level that we can't necessarily function at home, or we can function at home but can't function at work. We want to create some sort of a balance there. And to do so, we sometimes need to set goals. So we'll talk about establishing those goals and setting those goals and what those goals look like. We'll also have the conversation surrounding improving your overall well-being, because that's definitely something that is associated with stress and being well. And then we'll have a discussion about stress and time management, because that's really what we're here for, right? So how can we accomplish and get through and, go over these barriers that stress may create for us? And at the end, as I stated earlier, we'll talk about holiday mindfulness. While the holidays can be such a great and glorious time for some of us, for others of us, it may be a little touchy and it may be a little sensitive. So we'll talk about how to walk around and work around those situations as well, specifically in the workplace. And then we'll touch on some employee resources that we have as VDH employees, but and more so as Commonwealth employees, resources that we have through the Department of Human Resource Management, also known as DHRM. And then, again, we'll go over any questions that you may have. So in terms of learning objectives, we want to be able to, at the end of this session, identify and review what stress is. We want to talk about some work stresses and the effects of stress and what that looks like on us. And then we also want to have an understanding of what work-life balance is and the value that it provides to us, not only individually, but when we have a work-life balance, it also provides a great source of assistance in bettering us so that we can be better for our organization and ultimately to help the customers that we serve, right? So to help the Commonwealth. And then we'll talk about establishing those SMART goals. So making sure that you can walk away and have that information with you as well. So what is stress? Here are a few images of what stress may look like. I'm pretty sure I was probably the young lady in the corner on the right at some point this week due to this migration, but here we are. We made it to Thursday. We're 4 days in. Again, hopefully everyone's thriving and getting through. So while there may not be a universal definition for everyone, we may see it differently. In terms of what it actually is, most commonly we look at it as some sort of physical, mental, or emotional strain or some sort of tension within us Another popular definition of stress is that, it's a condition or a feeling experienced when us as individuals perceive that something may exceed more than the resources that we actually have to take care of that situation. So while moderate levels of stress can actually improve performance, as I talked about earlier, all stress isn't necessarily bad, but too much stress can definitely cause an unproductive level of anxiety. So there are a few levels of stress that or a few areas of stress that I want to touch on real quickly here. So acute stress being one of them. And when we think of acute stress, we think of fight or flight. So that's our body preparing to defend ourselves for something that may take place or something that's about to happen. That's, preparing for a presentation, preparing for an argument that you may have. That's what that may look like. And then in terms of chronic stress, that is stress that we see on the daily. So that's the stress that we may see associated with our work, because we spend a lot of time at work, right? That may be our children, that may be our bills. And sometimes because we see this often, we kind of tend to push it away or push it down and kind of ignore it. But the problem with that is if it's left uncontrolled, it can definitely affect your health. And we don't want that, because then that affects your body, that affects your immune system. And ultimately that could put us out of work or just out of commission in general. And then we also have eustress. So that is the stress, that is the positive stress. So that's the stress that we have when, we're excited about something. So we're thinking about marriage, we're thinking about a promotion, we're thinking about having a baby. We're thinking about winning some sort of money. I know I wish I was one of those people who possibly won that $1 billion from that Powerball. We're thinking about new friends or graduation. And then we're also thinking about distress. So this is that negative stress that we think about. And in terms of that, that's, a divorce, a punishment or some sort of injury or some sort of negative feelings or financial problems or some sort of work difficulties. But in any case, like I said, that can definitely affect you in a negative way. So in looking at the effects of stress, if we had more time, I would love that everyone had actually had the opportunity to take this stress inventory test. But as you can see, I'll go ahead and open this in a larger window. As you can see, there are different values associated with these positive and negative aspects of life. So as I said, there's good stress and then there's bad stress. So we have marriage, but then we also see divorce on here. We also see difficulties in work, difficulties in personal life, and just readjusting to items. So all of these, when we take the time to add them up, you'll get some points. And so what this helps with is you're looking at what's happened within the past year. So if you had 150 points or less, it's relatively low. Those life changes are susceptible to stress. But if you're 150 to 300, that's when we kind of run into some problems. You have a chance of health breakdown in the next couple of years. And then if we're over 300, we really should take the time to reevaluate, what's going on in our lives. Again, physical stress can affect us physically. It can also affect us emotionally. Physically, we can have heart palpitations, we can have weight gain. Emotionally, it can be anxiety or some sort of unhealthy coping mechanism. You may run to food, you may run to liquor or some sort of other drugs, but we want to stay away from those things. And specifically in terms of stress and how it may be caused, just so that we're aware, there are some job conditions that can definitely lead to stress. So looking at the design of tasks. So sometimes we have a heavy workload. Sometimes we have infrequent rest breaks or long work hours, and that can lead to stress. We have, maybe your manager has a different style of management than what you're used to, and they're a micromanager. So it seems like they're always hounding you about something, and you just feel like you really can't work and be productive because you're always wondering what this person is thinking and why this person is on top of you, basically. And then another item in there is the interpersonal relationships at work. So if I have a poor social environment, if I'm not able to connect with individuals within the organization, specifically when it comes to remote work, I feel like I see that as a problem there. Just when people don't have that connection, that can be stressful for some folks. And then work roles in general. So there may be a conflict between what my job is and what the expectancy of that job is. And that can also tie into the management style of someone, right? And then career concerns in general. So let's say you have some sort of job insecurity. Let's say possibly that you are working in a grant funded position and you don't know what that's going to look like for you at the end of that grant cycle, if your position is still going to be there. So that can also cause stress. And then environmental conditions in general. So if we work in a condition that's maybe unpleasant or maybe physically dangerous to you, then those are times when I feel stressed out now. And again, I want to continue to lead back to we spend a lot of time at work. Almost a third of our week is spent at work. And let's not mention if we're working more than the dedicated 40 hours that we're supposed to work. So speaking of that, I want you all to take a moment and think about a couple of questions with me. So the first question, and no one has to answer because I don't want you to feel guilty or not guilty or feel some type of way, but how often do you work late because of something urgent? And I pause there because there's a difference between urgent and important. I feel like I need to say that again. There's a difference between urgent and important. Something may need to be done instantly and at that moment, but then something may just be important and not necessarily need to be done at that very moment. And then another question to think about is, do you actually enjoy your work? And so as a public health employee, I can, that's all of us, right? We work for public health, and a lot of times we hear people say, we don't necessarily do our work because of the money or because of the fame that comes along with it, but we really enjoy what we do because of how it affects the communities in which we live and in which we work. But that can be problematic because now I'm working 12 hours a day and not even recognizing it because I'm doing essentially what I enjoy to do. But we also have to be mindful of suffering from compassion fatigue. Is that something that anyone has heard of? The fact that, excuse me, we care so much that we give so much, and the next thing we know, we're feeling detached or we're lacking empathy, or now we're increasing this, drug or alcohol abuse or any type of thing that we need to stay awake. And we also need to be mindful of emotional exhaustion because that can also be problematic. And then how often do you check your phone? Our phones can definitely be helpful, but I was thinking earlier to myself, I remember a time, and I'm sure many of us do, when cell phones weren't as big as they are now, and you literally had to wait to get home to check your voicemail to see if anyone tried to contact you. But now, we're in a meeting and get distracted by our phones for another meeting. So we have to be mindful of our phones and how attached to them that we are, because that in itself can be stressful. And then what does work-life balance actually mean for you? It can mean different things to different people, but ideally we want to create some sort of balance between, I have a happy medium between this is what I do for work, I leave work at work, and then when I'm home, I'm tending to my family, I'm tending to my friends, I'm making sure that I'm doing things that actually make me happy and, give me that good stress, right? Give me that eustress as opposed to that distress. So I see this little comic in here. I don't even know. Are there even comics anymore? But welcome to Dogbert's seminar on work-life balance. So the first review, this list of your priorities, and you have a list of priorities listed in this purple box, and then you'll see you actually have 3 things, but you already knocked out 2. You got work and holidays, so now you have to pick. And that's essentially what we're doing when we think about work-life balance. So I have my work, I have my holidays, and now what? I have 1 item left to pick. So do I eat? Do I sleep? Do I shower? Do I exercise? What can I do, to balance out and not just be a workaholic? So in terms of work-life balance, it's definitely a buzzword. It's definitely something that we hear often. And according to the Cambridge Dictionary, it's the amount of time spent doing a job as compared to the amount of time spent with your family and on things that you actually enjoy. And then according to Forbes, one of the most important components of a healthy work environment is, it's one of the most important components of a healthy work environment, and it's essential to reducing stress and preventing work burnout in the workplace. So the benefits, when we look at it, because we see the signs of the imbalance there, right? So we have the health risk, we have the absenteeism, we have the burnout, and we want to stay away from all of those things. We want to make sure that we're healthy. We want to make sure that we're at work. We want to make sure that we're able to have the opportunity to provide, again, for the communities for which we work, because that's what we do. We're public, right? And so in terms of benefits, there's an increase to productivity. So according to Inc., they did a recent study of 50,000 workers, global workers that was, and they found that those that actually had a good work-life balance worked 21% harder than those who didn't. And so we also think about the reduction in staff turnover. So we know that we see, the Great Resignation is still going on and people are going to leave regardless. But if it's something that we can prevent, if it's something that as an organization we can help people do, then we want to prevent that. And then it improves mental and physical health. So stress can literally lead, I don't know how else to say it, but stress can literally kill you, right? It can lead to these heart attacks. It can lead to a stroke. So it's definitely something that we want to work toward and, decrease the amount of sick days that people have to take, create that balance between the professional and personal lives. And it also increases morale. And overall, you just have an overall greater well-being. So yeah, this is work-life balance, Charles, but how do I get there? That's a great question. I'm glad you asked, because I know somebody did. So when we're thinking about balance at home and in the office, we're thinking about as a home office. So I know that, we've shifted back into the office for the most part. Some of us are working hybrid schedules. But when you're at home, you want to make sure that you actually set up that home office and create a work environment. So don't feel like now I'm at home and then my home and personal life still merges together, because you want to have that separation. Otherwise, you're going to end up working 10, 12, 15 hours a day, waking up in the middle of the night, still working. And that's definitely not what we want to happen. We want to be able to leave stress at work, and I know that's much easier said than done. Because we spend so much time at work, there's so much thought there. So we're often thinking about work, even when we don't want to be. I know I have been guilty of it. I've definitely woken up in the middle of the night before, like, oh, wait, did I do such and such? But we really have to attempt to try to leave work things at work. And turning off your phone. So again, the phone can be great. We'll talk about a couple apps in a little bit that can help with, working toward meditation and, things like that. But then, sometimes the phone can be problematic and lead to even more stress than is necessary. And we've got to take some me time. You've got to relax, practice emotional intelligence. You want to handle interpersonal relationships well. You also need to release, you want to open safe spaces for yourself. You want to reset. I think of that as the 3 R's, the relax, release, reset. Because peace of mind, it's not only beneficial, but it's priceless and it should be protected. That's definitely one of the things that will help combat stress. And we also have to maintain our boundaries. So you want to create a work environment that promotes work-life balance for you. And then, of course, that helps, others as well. Specifically, I'm going to have a conversation with those managers and supervisors right now that are in here. So if you're sending these emails late at night, and then you have staff that are reading those emails or seeing those emails because, oh, look, my emails come to my phone, then it feels like they feel like they need to, reply to that. So we should really be taking advantage of, if you do need to work or send out those emails, taking advantage of the delayed send. So we can, I'm sending this email at 10 o'clock, but, Tommy doesn't have to know that because it's not getting to him until 8:30 the next morning. So that can go a long way. And of course, for those of us that were here, when COVID first came around and it really took over our lives, we were working those extended hours, working 7 days a week and not having any breaks. And that leads to burnout, right? So now that it's kind of dwindled down, I know I'll say kind of dwindled down, but it's still around, but we also want to make sure that we're still taking care of ourselves. And I thought I saw a comment that someone mentioned earlier about with COVID, we need to learn to go back to our normal lives. It's kind of difficult. And then when it comes to being at work, what that looks like is, it translates into leaving stress at home. So the same way we need to leave work at work, we need to leave home at home. And again, something that I know It's difficult to do, but if we really put our minds to it and focus on it, the things that we focus toward and focus on, we can really bring to fruition and help make come true. So breaking up large tasks. Sometimes some people end up in situations where I have a large task in front of me. It just seems like a mountain and I can't climb Everest right now. So I'm just going to put it in the back of my mind. And then Everest is still going to stand there, but the days approach, and finally I have to climb it and I can't. And now I'm stuck, and now I'm even more stressed than what I would have been. Breaking up those tasks into smaller tasks will definitely prove beneficial to reducing the levels of stress that we experience when it comes to work projects. And delegating tasks. And that's not only something that as a supervisor or manager can do, like just as an employee, when you build relationships with individuals and your coworkers, then you have that understanding and have that ability to say, hey, I'm working on this. Do you mind helping me with this portion of it? Not necessarily giving up all of your work, but making sure that, you can find that help and get that assistance where you need to. And leading back to breaking up the large tasks, setting those attainable goals. So making sure that those goals are something that can actually be achieved. And speaking of goals, those goals should be SMART, right? And I'm sure this is something that we've all heard of in the past. And if not, then welcome to SMART Goals 101. So our goals should be SMART. So they should be specific, they should be measurable, they should be attainable, they should be relevant, and they should be timely. So you should define your goal as much as possible with not too much ambiguous language. Are you able to track the progress? Are you able to track and measure the outcome of that goal? And then is the goal reasonable enough to be accomplished? And if it is, then how so? How am I actually going to get there? And do I need to collaborate with other people to do so? And is it worthwhile? Is it actually relevant? Does it have anything to do with what I'm doing? Am I trying to figure out how to cross the street when I don't even have to get across the street to get anywhere? And then your objectives should be timely. So, include a time limit. That way you're not saying, well, I'm going to do X, but I have no idea when I'm going to finish it. And now it's in the back of my closet, in the back of my mind. And then it's like, oh, wait, here's X. You forgot all about it. So make sure they're specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. And they should be personal, plain, and simple as well. We want to make sure that they're not anything that's just too much and too crazy that now we just end up even more stressed than what we were in the first place. So that leads me to talking about well-being. So how do we achieve well-being, improve and maintain our well-being? And that's part of that is having a balanced lifestyle. So, we're fortunate to work for an organization, an agency that has several leave options. And again, we'll talk some more about this a little later, but time off is important. Make sure that you're actually utilizing that time. And again, I know I was here during COVID. I know that, we didn't necessarily have that opportunity, but now it's really important that, not only so that you don't lose your leave at the end of the year, but also just so that you have that time to reset, to relax, to think about it. And then, so you want to maintain strong relationships as well. And you want to have hot conversations with people. Charles, what is a hot conversation? I'm glad that you asked. You want to be honest, you want to be open, and you want to be transparent. And you should expect the same from others. And then that creates a healthy relationship. You want to stay connected to individuals. You want to meditate. Meditation can help. It can allow you to actually sit down and think to yourself, observe your thoughts. It reduces stress. It helps you sleep. It improves your listening. It can provide you with ideas. It gives you time to reflect. And there are several apps. So back to the phone, there are several apps, that are right accessible at your hand. You've got Amvana, mindfulness app, Headspace, and all of them are great. You want to enjoy each day. Don't procrastinate on your happiness. If you procrastinate on anything, your happiness should not be one of them. You want to make sure that you take time to laugh. Laughter reduces stress. And aside from managing metabolism and reducing inflammation, laughter is just good for you. I hear that a merry heart doeth good like medicine. So I'd rather take that laughter as medicine than have to take any sort of medication. And then your emotional well-being, it may need care if you're beginning to isolate yourself. So that's also what we need to do, not isolate yourself, but you want to make sure that you take time to yourself, to meditate But you also don't want to be too disconnected from everyone. You want to set the goals that we talked about earlier. You want to get enough rest, and you want to ask for help if you need it. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to go to counseling. It's okay to go to therapy. Again, with the way our jobs are set up, the way we have so much empathy towards others, we need that release and we need that help. So in terms of stress and time management and, what we can do and what that can look like to get us through, we can exercise, right? Exercise increases the production of endorphins in the brain. The endorphins are responsible for that feel good. So I love to be on the treadmill. I love to run. I love to do the elliptical. And I promise you, after I get off, I definitely feel like I can take on the world. Just call me Superman after that. And it's those endorphins that are kicking in, right? And then it also promotes better sleep when we do that. And it can be fun. It can boost your energy. Another thing to think about is your diet. Cortisol is a stress hormone, and there are some food items that we can eat that will help us with that will increase, help us with our cortisol levels, because if they're too high too long, that can definitely hurt you. So there are some foods that we can eat that are beneficial in lowering those levels, specifically dark chocolate, bananas, garlic, but then eating a balanced diet starts with breakfast. How many of us in here ate breakfast today? I can actually admit that I did not. So don't follow my lead, but eating breakfast can definitely help as well. And in terms of sleep, now this is one thing that I do not play about. Sleep is very important. The melatonin plays a role in your sleep. The production is released in the brain, and that's specifically around times of day. And now that we have this darkness for a good portion of the day, we also have to recognize that. But then we also want to make sure that we're getting quality sleep, because if I'm getting enough sleep but not quality sleep, then I'm still messed up and I'm still having these stressful times. So I will tell you that according to the CDC, adults between the ages of 18 and 60 should be getting 7 or more hours of sleep per night. And then between the ages of 61 and 64, you should be getting about 7 and 9 hours. And if you're 65 or older, you should be getting between 7 and 8 hours. Something to think about it. How many of us actually got that amount of hours based on our age last night? Again, I won't ask you to answer that because I don't want anyone to feel guilty or not. But this also leads to the fact that we're talking about wellness, as stress management. So even if you're getting enough sleep, make sure that you're getting quality sleep. And then self-assess. It's okay to let go of perfection. We won't always have the answer or do things correctly, but, take the time to review what you're doing and what you're thinking about. What messages are you portraying to others? Are you conveying a message of relax and have fun? Are you conveying a message of I'm always stressed out, I'm always having problems? Recently I heard someone say that the quality of life comes down to the quality of questions you ask yourself every day. And so connected to that, I think I touched on this a little earlier, but what you focus more on is what will expand your focus. So if I'm focusing on making myself happy, then I can work on that. And in my life, am I working toward that, or am I working toward always thinking about what makes me sad or what stresses me out? You want to relax. How's your emotional well-being? Are you isolating yourself? Are you feeling irritable? Are you having racing thoughts all the time? Again, things to think about. And then in terms of counseling, it's okay, again, to ask for help. It's okay to have conversations with people regarding your situations. And then in terms of time management, like I said earlier, there's a difference between something that's urgent and important, and we have to recognize that. And then you want to make sure that you learn to say no. No is a sentence, no is a response, no is an answer. We don't always have to have, no, in work we need to. But in our personal lives, we don't necessarily have to have a reason for saying no. A no can just be a no. And you want to make sure that you stay flexible, staying flexible to what's going on around you. And even when we think about work, we have the option, some of us have the option to work these flexible schedules. And just a couple more questions for you all to think about and to ponder. I know we're a little over time, so I apologize. But what are the best choices that you have made in your life so far? Take that away from you. What are you thinking about? What are the little things that happened today, that brought you joy, or yesterday, or the day, before that? And what are some things that you're really good at? And how have you made a difference in someone else's life? So these are questions that can lead us to gratitude, which is something that I do want to touch on again because we're in the times of the holidays. So, happy holidays is something that we often say, right? Happy holidays, happy holidays. But for some people, it's not necessarily a happy time. Considering those people who, had a relative or someone close to them that isn't at the table this year that was, last year. And also remember that sad, seasonal affective disorder is real. And, some people do become sad or clinically depressed during the winter. So we have to consider those individuals as well. And no matter what the experience, the holidays do have the ability to place more pressure, even if it is good pressure or good stress. And it's okay to check on others, right? Check on others in your circles. But what messages are you, conveying to others during this time? Is it a message of happiness, relax, have fun? Are you conveying a message of, I want a gift, or, I'm pressing on you so much about what the holidays mean to other people? And having an attitude of gratitude. So again, while this time is festive for most people, it can be a depressing time, a hurtful time for some people. So, making sure that we're checking in on others and actually asking questions and having conversations. And even if it's just a mental gratitude for someone, presence over presence, I like that. Yes, exactly. So self-care. And then what does that look like for you? So self-care can look like a range of things. So spending time outside. I don't know if you want to spend too much time outside now. It's a little wet over here in the Richmond area, but reading a new book, taking a nap, learning to meditate, trying something new, watching your favorite movie, turning into emotions. There are so many options, and I'm sure that if I asked the room, many of you would have different options as to what self-care actually looks like for you. And another thing, you want to remember the me in Mary, right? Recently, again, I heard someone else say, remember to place your own mask on before helping children or others around you. That's what they tell us on flights, right? So the same here. You want to remember that you are important when it comes to, these merry times as well. And then last thing really quickly, just want to make sure that we are all aware of resources that we have as employees. So I'll take you to the intranet page very quickly. And then, so once here we see the Commonwealth employee programs. Again, we're fortunate to have many benefits as state employees. So some of those are listed here. Also, also just things to help, Weight Watchers, alternate work schedules. And again, back to that leave. And of course, EAP is another resource that we have that some of us forget, but it's beneficial, it's helpful. It's provided to us at no cost when we do have the health plan. So that's one thing to remember as well. But so that's the end for me. I did see a couple hands raised. I know that this was scheduled from 11 to 11:30. So I know that we're over, but I am available if anyone wants to stick around and ask those questions that you had or comments that you had. I'm open to conversation. So I will keep an eye on the chat and I'll watch for any hands that are raised. But thank you all for participating. I know some of us have to go, but just make sure that you really take the time to create a balance between your work and life. And I know it can be challenging, specifically by balancing both. But remember that we're working toward being healthier, living enhanced lifestyles. And for those of you that do have to leave now, I wish you wellness, I wish you safety, and take care.